And the wait is almost over. The NFL draft is just around the corner in a couple of days. Welcome back to the Steel Curtain Network. I'm Daniel J, your host. Alongside with me, as always, is Shannon White. Shannon, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing great, and I'm just waiting with bated breath. I'm so excited. I'm like an old lady with the vapors. I'm just ready for this all this speculation and projection to be over, and to know who our the next young members of the Pittsburgh Steelers is going to be. I can't wait.
Neither can I, my man. It's almost time. It's almost here. There's a lot of speculation going on in the air of which direction the Pittsburgh Steelers may or may not go. I personally think they're going to go, tackle. But there were some interesting things that were said at the conference today. Did you get by chance get a catch Omar Khan and Mike Tomlin's conference earlier today? Their pre-draft conference.
Yeah, I watched a good bit of it, and like everybody else, was trying to decipher and read between the lines. Omar Khan graduated with honors from the Mike Tomlin School of Public Speaking and Dealing with the Media because he said a lot and gave us nothing.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Well, there was a little bit of something I thought. When it came to, I guess, the top 30 picks, it sounded like Mike Tomlin kind of made the statement that it's not just so much that they're bringing in guys that they expect to draft or be there, but these are also guys that could be there later on in the future, or
Mhm.
could be guys that the Steelers could see be playing up against. And so I think in a way, when he goes out there and he's talking to all these players at the Senior Bowl and all this other stuff, and he's already scouting them as far as strengths, weaknesses, and that aspect, not just to bring them on to the potential, bring them on as a Steeler, but also to defend against them. And I liked it. I thought it was genius. Because he even mentioned it himself. There's not a lot of coaches or guys that
Mhm.
cover this portion of the NFL, the pre-draft stuff, in the manner that he does. What's your take on that type of situation or the type of statement that he made?
Yeah, he basically said it. He's messing with the media because he knows that anybody he talks to, it hits everywhere, and so he kind of, they could be a proverbial smoke screen for all we know,
Mhm.
and he admits that he does that. So, no other head coach that I'm familiar with has been as intimate and as involved in the pre-draft process. If you didn't know better, you think that Mike Tomlin was a scout
Yeah.
because that's the way he does things. He's like having him there is just like having a positional coach, because he's that knowledgeable, and he has a even at the press conference he was cracking jokes and laughing. You see how relaxed he is. He's already put in all the hard work. You see a lot of these guys from these other franchises are very stressed right now. They're feeling immense pressure. You watch Tomlin and he's just happy. He's like, we put in the work, now we're going to reap the benefits. And I believe that's from the front office to the coaching to the scouting department. They're all ready. Now it's what offers are they going to be able to make? What offers are going to be made to them? Um, they're in a optimal position because I think this group of decision makers for the Steelers is more prepared and more flexible than anything that we've seen for the past 2 decades. They proved it last year, and I expect more of the same this year.
Good deal. I expect a lot of the same as well. You know, the other thing that I thought of when I was listening to this press conference came to when it talked about like positions that they're scouting for, players that they're scouting for, that they may be flexible or perhaps maybe playing a position that they're not going to be expected to play with the Steelers in college. And like I think he said mentioned something about like, it might be a position they play during practice. You think of Broderick Jones with Georgia, where he would play during practice 50% of the time on the right side, even though he was primarily a left tackle throughout the game. And and he brought up Mike Tomlin, that is another point about maybe perhaps playing the position um, earlier in their career. And the person that I thought of immediately was Graham Barton, who is the tackle that I think a lot of people were thinking that could move over to the center position. That was a position I think he played early on in his collegiate career, hasn't played it since, but because of those connections I'm seeing, I think that might be somebody that they're looking at. Do you think that would be a reach for Graham there if at 20?
Well, we've been discussing this uh, for the last. Washington is another guy with position versatility, excellent athleticism, and technique that people are projecting essentially. And he shows everything that you would need to be able as a freshman.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit, Shannon. I'm not sure
When
if
Tomlin mentioned that, it does make sense that they could be referring to Barton.
right, right.
And my problem is the Steelers experience matters at center more than about any position. And you've got three candidates with that I think are plug and play centers
Mm-hmm.
in Zach Frazier, Jackson Powers Johnson. You have two incredible athletes with versatility in Barton and Fianu that I think can make the switch. So it's really going to depend on what the Steelers value more. Because one of the hardest things to do is to make a positional switch at the NFL level. Because you say, well, he's so athletic, he can do it. There's a lot of guys that cannot snap a football. To be just honest, they cannot snap a football. Just like you have two inside linebackers. One guy is comfortable wearing the green dot, and one guy it's paralysis of overanalysis. If you put that green dot on him and he has to call out the adjustments and stuff pre-snap, they freeze. They overthink. They lose that natural instinctive aggressiveness. So it's not just so easy to take a guy who played tackle, because the tackle, as you know, you're outside in a lot of one-on-one situations. You don't have to worry about line alignments or realignments. You don't have to worry about all the congestion that you have on the interior. I got into a discussion last night with a guy. Center is his place to play on the offensive line. It's not tackle. Tackle, you need athleticism because it's as mentally taxing as it is physically taxing. So I got.
Got you, got you. Yeah, you broke up a little bit there, but I think we got the gist of it. Um, you know, I agree with you for the most part. I think that when it comes to the center position or any position, I think the Steeler fans are a little bit kind of, I don't know, maybe scorned a little bit with the Kendrick Green choosing, in the third round there. Guard, primarily a guard, played a handful of center throughout his collegiate career and is expected to transition and be the starting center right away. And it just didn't translate onto the field. Now, I do think that the guys that the Steelers are looking at and that you mentioned are probably better prospects for that change than Kendrick Green was.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. And so I think there is a possibility that that does occur. But if you end up getting somebody that is switching in from another position, would you think that that person is going to be a day one starter? I would hope they, played well enough to be so, but I would hope that it's not something that is out of necessity either. Um, how big do you think, or how much do you think the Steelers are going to weigh in on whoever they draft in the center position at whichever round is going to be the starter this upcoming year come day one?
I think that's the plan, that whoever they pick is going to be the starter. If they have a little bit of trouble adjusting, let's say there is a position switch, I think that they may have to use a Nate Herbig or, um, I've seen mentioned here on the comments about moving Daniels because of his experience at Iowa. But you don't want to take your best offensive lineman who has played excellent at guard and have to move him. You want fewer movement on the line because Daniels has solidified his career since coming to the Steelers and being left to play at right guard. So that's why I think that a experienced plug and play guy is preferable. But if they do take a guy like a Barton or a Fiantu, they could double dip. And there's a guy in the middle round, say a Mason McCormick out of South Dakota State, who has also got interior versatility. And the Steelers do have Spencer Anderson, a guy with 5 position versatility already on the roster. So that would be insurance.
Yeah.
And that way you wouldn't have to move a guy who's already established starter.
Makes sense. Bernie's asking you, he wants to know, what do you prefer? Who would you prefer, Barton or Frazier? I think I know your answer, but I'd like everybody.
I am like everybody else. I'm intrigued by Barton's athleticism because in this offense, Arthur Smith's offense, if you could pull and you could reach that second level, that mobility and that athleticism would be coveted. I just wish he'd have played center more to where the transition, a shotgun snap. Therefore, I prefer Frazier's experience, but it's going to be hard for them to bypass Barton's. So either guy is an excellent choice, and it's really going to depend on who they prefer. Yeah. I don't think you could go wrong with either pick. That's my 2 favorite center prospects for the Steelers, is one of them 2 guys. Because if you go another route in the first round, to get Barton, you're going to have to go first round.
Right.
If they go Barton in the first, that changes the rest of the board. If they go, let's say, a cornerback, Quinyon Mitchell or Terran Arnold falls to them and they take them in the first, they can try to trade up to make sure they get Frazier or one of these other plug-and-play centers early in the second. So however they decide will change the draft board.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. I do also think that Barton is probably a guy that's going to have to be drafted in the first round if the Steelers are going to want to acquire him. I think Frazier, like you mentioned, would be a guy that is available in the second. I'm not sure if he's going to be available at 51. I think the Steelers might have to move up a little bit to go and acquire him. But I'd be great with any of those guys. I mean, I think you're right. There's about 3 guys at the top of the list there when it comes to the center position that can go in there and immediately make an impact. You also have whoever it is going to have James Daniels to his right and Isaac Seumalo to his left. 2 leaders, 2 guys that can really mold whoever this is going to be into the player that the Steelers need him to be. And so I think
leave those 2 guards where they're at, because that center is going to need that. You want that stability at guard for a young center.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's going to really help out this offensive line. I think it's going to help out whoever is going to be there. I mean, you may even start to, I think I was going to say you may even start to consider more of the athletic type of player, somebody who has the attributes, so to speak, but you just got to coach him up because you're going to have such great players around him. However, that center position, as Tomlin had stated, there's the communication aspect of that position is huge. Knowledge and confidence in what you're seeing and pointing out is huge. And so, for a rookie to do that, that's going to be
chemistry between the quarterback and center is key. It's not just the communication and stability up the middle, something the Steelers have lacked since Pouncey retired. So all these things, it makes a center in the first round, a legitimate target because of how important it is. I think the Steelers, like Dan Moore Jr., they think a lot more of him than I do. So I think they would be willing to roll back, try to pick up a project guy. It's funny, the top 5 or 6 tackles are the guys that have first round grades in my book are pretty much guys that can play quick. From second and third round guys are guys that have a lot of potential, but they got weaknesses that's going to have to be developed and coached up. So if the Steelers go that route, I can see Dan Moore starting again, even though I'd rather that didn't happen.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would hope that Dan Moore's not going to be the starting guy out there on the left side of the field. Because that means Broderick's playing on the right side. And I think if you end up going in 2 years in the right, are you going to want to transition him to the left side year 3? Or are you going to want to keep him where he's played for 2 years, has adapted, and has practiced? So that becomes a question. So I think that also limits who you're going to be able to pick, because if you're going to try to get a left tackle in the draft, that's got to be pretty early. I mean, that's why you got Broderick Jones at 14 and you had to jump up to do so. And so if you're going to stay put at 20 and pick a center, you can get a right tackle, I think, at 51. Where do you think the tackle group is in this draft? If the Steelers don't go tackle in the first round, where do you see them attacking that position? Is there a second round grade, or is that a position that there's a little bit of a drop off and you're better off waiting to the third or fourth for the value?
Second or third. Our buddy Andrew has put a question up, and I was getting ready to bring it up. It was breaking news today. Fianu had his knee, I don't know if it was both knees or one knee, red flagged during physicals. Last year, that happened to Darnell Washington. Nobody knew what was going on, and Washington kept falling in the draft. And the reason being is he has arthritic knees. Now, that can shorten his NFL career. At least one of Fianu's knees got red flagged, and we don't know why. But usually, if that's the case, it's maybe some arthritis. And you don't know how long, he might have a full 10-year career, but it could shorten it. So there's always that risk. So that could push him down the line a little bit and make him fall some in the draft. I'm not overly concerned about it if the Steelers doctors sign off on him. The Steelers drafted Darnell Washington, and they took a chance on him. And I feel like if the Steelers doctors are comfortable with Fianu, then I think that they would go ahead and select him. But that also adds an element of concern when he's also having to make a positional switch as well. And being an interior lineman is more difficult on the knees because of all that congestion inside. If I was drafting Fianu, I'd want him on the outside more.
Got you. So you wouldn't want him in the center?
I would be concerned, especially if he's having, the early stages of a chronic injury or a chronic problem. I just see too many guys in the interior get wiped out. I mean, we remember Pouncey, David DeCastro as a rookie, wiped him out for the year with friendly fire when he took his knee out by accident. Yeah. I don't want a guy with a knee injury already as a first-round pick playing on the interior.
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, you're absolutely right. And like you mentioned last year, Washington ended up dropping. Do you think – well, I think that Fondue is going to end up dropping as well. Those are some serious questions, those knees, and especially if it's a arthritic or a chronic injury that's not going to go away and could shorten the length of his career. I think that you can probably find something, or he may end up dropping out of the first round altogether.
It can easily happen because, that first round guy, you got to hit on them.
Yeah.
See, I'm even that way about Mims now. The more I was really excited about Mims because his potential's enormous, just like he is. With that athleticism, like you had guys like Brown last year out of Ohio State. the right tackle that went to Cleveland,
Mhm.
massive, long arms, all that, just like Mims. But he didn't move like Mims does. Mims is very mobile, especially for a gigantic human being. But you have to consider him a project because
Yeah.
he's had so few snaps. And do you want to take a project in the first round? It's such a huge area of need because if he doesn't pan out, that could be a huge problem.
Yeah, definitely could. Definitely could. We're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we'll get more into this conversation about the draft. Don't go anywhere on the YouTube side. Just a few seconds, audio, just a few words from our sponsors. And we're back. Welcome back to the Hangover. I'm Daniel. Alongside with me is Shannon. This is the last hangover before the draft, before we get some new players for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we'll have a lot more to talk about in the next coming weeks. Um, Shannon, before we get back into the topic, you were talking about a couple of articles and an article that is hoping to drop out pretty soon. You want to tell us a little bit about that article?
Yeah, I just finished it today because last night I guest hosted on Jeremy Bett's Steelers Q&A. And we had some great questions. One question was about what position are the Steelers likely to double dip at? And I thought that was a great question. And this is the season to do it because you have multiple positions that there's really excellent depth at. And the Steelers have multiple needs. So I wrote an article pointing out that offensive line, as we talked about, could easily happen because they need a center and a tackle and even a later round guard because, they may have some decisions to make on James Daniels' contract next year. Wide receiver, they could easily double dip because they need a quality, capable wide receiver too, but they also could use a young slot guy because right now they're going to go with Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin the third, and they got a couple other guys they brought in, but they need more proven production there, or at least potential. And this is such a deep class of wide receivers. You could get a guy like maybe Luke McCaffrey, which is Christian McCaffrey's younger brother. I mean, he's got them great genetics, and he played at Rice, and I mean, this kid could really answer some needs for the Steelers in the middle round.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have cornerback because the Steelers need a cornerback too. And there's a lot of mid round to late round slot guys that are going to fall to a middle round because they lack length.
Mm-hmm.
But they still have excellent capabilities, and the Steelers slot guy. So check out the article out. Hopefully it'll post tomorrow. And I think, there's a lot more information in the article, and I'll save it for that.
Awesome. Make sure you go check that out at steelcurtainnetwork.com, your one-stop shop for Pittsburgh Steelers news and coverage. For those that are checking this out on the YouTube side and not aware of all the audio podcasts that go on, while you're at steelcurtainnetwork.com, you can check out all the other audio podcasts, including mine that was just aired out this past Friday called State of the Steelers. So, there were some questions I was going to ask you. One of them was going to be, what position do you think that the Steelers are going to double dip in? But we've answered that. Excluding specialists, which position do you think the Steelers do not target at all in this draft?
Well, I was thinking they might try to do, just focus on, because they need defensive line help. Even if it's a one-dimensional run stuffer, they need to, bring in some big bodies on the defensive line as well. Inside linebacker, you get in that fourth round, you got, if a guy like Jermaine Trotter Jr.'s there, or if Colson was for some reason to fall, Gray, there's different guys. I think you'd want to target that. And there's some value in a late round safety. So I would have said earlier, I would say quarterback, because I think you've got 3 quarterbacks and you can add one as an undrafted free agent. Because, a guy like a Sam Hartman could fall out of the draft altogether. And I think he would be a really good fit for the Steelers. So, but today in the presser, Omar Khan said nothing's off the table.
That's true. That is true. I mean, even when you look at the quarterback position, I think that we all think it's solidified. It's there, but I believe everybody's on a 1-year deal, right?
Yeah.
So there's nobody for the future there still. And I can see if somebody were to drop in the draft, a Penix due to his injury history, I can see him dropping out of the first or even second round. And maybe if the puzzle pieces fall where they may, and they've acquired, a receiver via trade with the 49ers, or, pick up a couple of these other linemen that they're hoping to, and then maybe you never know, they can go out there and pick up that guy.
Did you hear the latest rumor this morning?
What's that?
Was that Penix is being considered in the first round by a couple of teams. Now, I don't necessarily see it, but they're saying there's multiple teams considering him.
In the first round?
In the first round, yes.
Wow. I mean,
now rumors this time of year is exactly that.
Yeah.
But when they're reporting it on national sports media, then I pay attention a little bit, because sometimes they hear behind the scene rumors that we're not privy to. I just follow the Steelers, but I don't think the Steelers are anywhere interested in an early quarterback.
Yeah, no, I think that if he didn't have the injury history that he had, I think he would definitely be a first round consideration for a first.
Yeah, his injury history is the big. Yeah, that's the drawback. Yeah,
that's the only red flag I see. I think some people kind of look down upon the left-handed aspect of his game. There's not been very many left-handed quarterbacks that have succeeded in the NFL. The only one I can think off the top of my head is Steve Young. That might be it, but I don't know if there's any others. Michael Vick, yes, he was a left-handed quarterback. There you go. And so you got 2 there, and I'm assuming that just because there hasn't been a lot of them, that there might be a little bit of pushback on that. But yeah, no, I mean, as far as the tape goes, and it's the way that guy can throw a ball, geez, I mean, he can really spin it.
Well, he's got a great arm, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Do you think that the Steelers in this draft are going to draft more offensive players, or do you think they end up with more defensive players when it's all said and done?
I think the needs offense. I expect more offensive players selected this year.
More offensive players selected, yeah. I can see that. I mean, when you look at the offensive side, you're looking at a center, you're looking at a tackle, you're looking at wide receiver. Defensively, I would think maybe perhaps inside linebacker, depending on how Cole Holcomb is coming along. I think that might be a position that you target. Interior defensive line is another position you might want to target, given the age of Cam Hayward and the longevity and the health issues when it comes to Larry Ogunjobi. Cornerback is definitely a position I think that you would want to target. I think the safety and strong safety and free safety have been secured up. So it is kind of even there. You have defensive line, middle linebacker, cornerback on one side, receiver, and 2 offensive linemen on the offensive side. When it's all said and done, who do you think is going to be which position or which side do you think is going to be filled more, have those positions filled more, the offense or defense? You think that they're going to be able to target all 3 of the offensive holes, or do you think they're going to target all 3 of the defensive holes?
I would assume both. I mean, part of being a rebuilding team is they have multiple needs on both sides. So
Right.
They have, by releasing some guys ahead of time, which it was confusing for a lot of people, I think they just put their cards out on the table and they said, this is areas we're going to focus on. And so they're not trying to hide anything.
Yeah.
they're going to be more open and upfront with the rest of the NFL front offices. They're already saying they've got good communications. That Con said they in the presser today that they've been talking to GM's talk, and they're like, hey, we're kind of interested in this, we're interested in that, so that when the board starts to take shape, even in the first round, once it started, teams can call and say, hey, I really want to trade up for this guy now. In the past, I don't think they were considered somebody that was good to deal with under Colbert, but now it's different.
Yeah.
So it would be great if they could address all these positions, but I have a feeling there'll be one or two that they won't feel they was able to address adequately.
Mhm.
So there'll probably be a couple more low-profile free agent signings post draft.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think that when it comes down to it, I think the middle linebacker is probably going to be the position, maybe not necessarily left out of the draft, but left out when it comes to quality of the draft player that they're acquiring. I don't think that position they're going to grab somebody who's going to end up being a starter anytime soon, more of a project player. Now you mentioned trading. The Steelers typically trade in every draft. It's not always in the first round. Typically, it's not. What round do you see the Pittsburgh Steelers trading, and what do you see? How do you see that trade, coming about?
I hate to give up any draft capital, but it's more important that the Steelers get their top 3 targets. If they can get the top 3 guys that they want, I think that they will have accelerated their rebuild substantially. So I can see them taking one of their 3rd round picks to swap and move up in the 2nd round to make sure they get, let's say, a tackle, a center, and a cornerback or a defensive lineman, who I think should be, at this point, their top targets. If they come out of the draft with those guys, but one thing I've said before as an option, I'd like to see them utilize some of next year's draft capital to move up to get the guys they want, because I like the talent in this draft class. And hopefully next year they will have showed improvement and we'll be picking later next year. Maybe 24, maybe, hey, 32 would be great. But all I'm saying is, really focus on this year to accelerate this rebuild.
Yeah, I agree with you. The Steelers right now, they have 7 picks, dropping down to 6 to move up for, a 2nd rounder and losing one of those 3rd rounds, probably, and hopefully that compensatory later 3rd round pick is what they're giving up to move up. But I do think I think that might be what the plan is. I think that's the most likely thing that's going to occur. I think that's what everybody's, thinking that's going to happen, is that the Steelers are going to target either wide receiver or tackle in the 1st round and move up in the 2nd for a center. Now, wide receiver is a huge position of need. Who's your favorite so far out of the draft that you can see that fit for the Pittsburgh Steelers that, probably looking at a 2nd or a 3rd rounder? I don't think the Steelers will target receiver in the 1st round, but they may. Where do you think the receiver is targeted, and what kind of receiver do you think they're looking at?
Well, there's 2 things to consider. Arthur Smith's offense for the last 5 years, the number 2 receiver averages like 40-some catches, 500-some yards, and 2 touchdowns. The number 1 receiver gets a lot of targets. We know that was A.J. Brown, and that was, I can't think of London in Atlanta. These are by far was the established wide receiver ones for the Falcons. But Arthur Smith likes to use tight ends a lot, and he uses running backs. So the number 2 wide receiver doesn't get a lot of targets. So I want the Steelers. At one time I thought A.D. Mitchell from Texas was a great target in the 1st round even. But now there's reports coming out that he has an attitude problem, and he's hard to coach, and he's very immature. I would avoid that. We've had enough of that in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
So second or third round guys, tons of them. You got Keon Coleman, Ricky Pearsall, Xavier Leggetti. You got Landon McConkley, Malachi Corley. There is so many. Roman Wilson from Michigan. You got so many guys there that would be a great fit in the Steelers' offense that you could get in that second or third round. It doesn't make sense to. I even question if it makes sense to trade away draft capital and pay somebody $25 million a year to get an established guy. Because let's say you bring in a Brandon Hook to be, he's going to be your number one because he's more established than George Pickens right now. Well, how happy is George Pickens next year if he's getting 40 catches, 500 yards, and 2 touchdowns? You're to set yourself up for problems. And to me, that says I don't have faith in George Pickens. So I would stick with a draft pick to play at wide receiver 2.
It's good analysis. I think you're absolutely right with it. But that receiver that you mentioned that they're going to pick up, this, you have full confidence in George Pickens as being at wide receiver 1, grasping all those targets, being the guy that's the first guy? Or do you think that, because I thought that the guy that the Steelers were going to end up drafting was going to be the primary targeted receiver, the guy that's going to fill in the Deontay Johnson shoes. And in that scenario, I feel that would be wide receiver 1 if they're the ones getting the majority of the targets.
Well, you would need a superior route runner,
right?
Which Pearsall, McConkley, these guys are,
mm-hmm.
And that will allow. See, we got to look at Arthur Smith's offense, which is heavy run, play action, a lot of deep throws, 15-yard average throws, or behind the line of scrimmage. There's it's either a drop off to a back or a screen, or it's deep down the field. Russell Wilson throws a really good deep ball. Justin Fields is a great arm. Both of them guys can play in this system, but that will favor Pickens because he didn't have anybody to get him the ball deep consistently to Mason Rudolph. Mason Rudolph played, and he lit it up deep. So I think Wilson and Fields can get the ball to George Pickens deep, which he might not get the total targets that Deontay Johnson got, but I expect him to run a full route tree, slants, and not everything come back or deep. And so Pickens, I think he could be even more efficient and effective with these quarterbacks in Arthur Smith's offense. So, and as I said, that number 2 wide receiver is not going to get a lot of targets. So a rookie will have to ease into everything. It won't be a big issue if they only have 40 catches, 500 yards. It would be a huge issue if that guy is George Pickens because he will not be happy.
No, he won't. That we've seen his frustrations already. We got a couple of things in the comment section I wanted to bring up. The first one says if you the only one says if you had to bring back one player who used to play for the Steelers, who would that be? It has to be an active player or an inactive players who may stay I'm assuming say still capable. I'm guessing somebody who's capable today, not somebody from the too distant past.
Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah. I think that there's multiple guys. You could talk about a Kevin Dotson that they never used correctly, who now is either the highest paid guard or the second highest paid guard in the NFL because he cashed in after a great season with the Rams. The Steelers refused to move him to the right side. It was pure stubborn. He was not happy on the left side, and they're like, you're not going to force our hand. We're going to play you where we want to play you. They're notoriously bad for that. I've already heard that Chuk Okorafor is going to be playing left tackle with the Patriots. Even though everybody swore him down, he can't play left tackle.
Yeah.
Everybody swears up and down Dan Moore Jr. can't play right tackle. Well, guess what? He can't play left tackle either. There is something going on in the water in Pittsburgh that the coaches refuse to play guys where they want to play and they're more effective.
Yeah.
And so there's multiple guys out there that I'd like to see back. I'd like to see Terrell Edmonds back because he was a great fit for Minka Fitzpatrick. Uh, if we, I mean, look at the Gravedigger,
Yeah, that was what I
Hargrave.
was gonna say.
Yeah, I mean, the dude's a beast.
Hmm.
He wasn't used correctly in Pittsburgh. He didn't fit the system. They never would commit to Mike Hilton, just like Terrell Edmonds. Mike Hilton wanted not 1 year contracts. He wanted a 3 year contract, and the Steelers wouldn't offer it to him. They treated him like an undrafted free agent, but he become much more than that. So there's multiple guys that I would like to see back be an asset for the Steelers.
Yeah, I was going to say Hardgrave as well. I think the one player that's probably not on anybody's list is Chase Claypool. I don't think he's even in the NFL anymore.
I heard he was trying out for Canada.
Yeah, that's
So
what
I
I
don't know.
heard too. That's what I heard too. And the last one I was gonna bring up to your attention is Mark brought up that Cam Sutton is available. Now I know he had some domestic issues, but I think that his domestic issues have dropped down to a misdemeanor, and it's no longer a felony. I don't think it's a good idea. It's not great optically. But what are your thoughts on the possibility of bringing back a Cam Sutton if all these legal things get taken care of?
Well, my concern is depending on what part of the country you're in,
Hmm.
things that should be felonies are you can walk out with no bail.
Yeah.
Cam Sutton supposedly threw his significant other out of a second story window.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was what was reported.
Mhm.
Uh, I have no use for that player on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now I don't know the story. Obviously, they
Right.
would have to do their due diligence and really check into this. But any violence like that towards a female, I'm not interested in ever seeing them in the black and gold.
I agree as well. Obviously, see how credible everything is. And it didn't look good. It didn't really look in his favor when he was, wanted for like weeks.
Yeah, and wouldn't come in, and if
So
you didn't do nothing, come on in.
right. That didn't look good optically on his part. So I think the Steelers would probably want to stay, a little bit of a distance themselves from that type of situation. That's only going to become a distraction. When you bring the person in and questions are going to be coming in from the media, and not just to that player, but to the player surrounding that one player. And right now, when you have such a young team that's impressionable and needs guidance, I'm not sure if you want that around. You get what I'm saying? And so let's see. But yeah, with that being said, I think you're frozen there, Shannon. Don't look like you're moving much.
No, I don't know. They're having signal issues today for some reason. I wanted
Yeah.
to acknowledge this.
Okay.
That accusations against Big Ben come out before the draft. On that draft night, I wanted him to be traded to the Raiders, who supposedly was talking to the Roonies about trading for him.
Mhm.
I wanted him gone. I have no use for that.
Mhm.
And it took me a while. And after the reports come out and no charges were filed, and I read the report, I realized what actually did happen. There was no rape involved. Anybody that's smart enough, read the report, and you'll see the exact same thing. Since that time, I've seen the man that he become from being an arrogant jerk when he was drafted during his first couple of seasons to the man he did eventually become. But, we live in a small-minded world where people ain't smart enough to see when people have changed. They still say that Ray Lewis got away with murder too. Because a person's in a general vicinity doesn't mean that they, were the one that holding the weapon or committing the crime. People make bad decisions and hang around with the wrong crowd, and then they get smart and they learn from it.
Yeah.
But again, you have people, fans of other teams that love to throw that in my face all the time. But I know from people I know personally who met him and know him, he is a totally no doubt that did not happen. Right, let's put it that way.
Yeah, yeah. I looked into it as well, and it definitely
I'm
didn't
still
seem.
past that I want who have a history of.
Yeah, yeah. No, you're right, man. I mean, I've looked into it as well when it came to the Ben Roethlisberger accusations. I mean, everybody did, and it definitely seems like Big Ben was, maybe perhaps even financially targeted. I don't know, but um, he did change. He did become a different person, but he was also a guy that almost didn't become, wasn't a steal. You mentioned the Raiders. The 49ers were another team that had recently come up that the story came out that they were going to try to trade for him as well. So the Roonies were more than willing to get rid of him as well. Um, like I said, I mean, they did the investigations happened, and the outcome was what the outcome was. And I think the other big difference is that Big Ben was a part of the team at that point. Cam Sutton isn't right now. You know
Yeah,
what I'm saying? So
exactly.
you would be bringing in somebody that has some, at least a questionable situation that's going on right now. It'd be one thing if it was completely settled and all those things as well, but it's not. It's ongoing, and he didn't turn himself in for a while, so optically it just kind of looks bad. I think that it'd be best for maybe even himself and for any team to wait until those things have been completely taken care of, even if it's been dropped down to a misdemeanor charge. I don't think he's accepted it yet, and I don't know what type of punishment he could still receive from it. So
Yeah, I mean, it would shock me if, depending on how it turns out, that there wasn't some kind of small suspension.
oh yeah, or a large one, just because of the situation that is going down.
Yep.
Let's see, real quick. Dave Schofield posted up on his Twitter that multiple teams are already calling the Steelers about moving up to 20. So
Hey,
that could be it if they
hey,
move him
you get the
back.
right offer.
Yeah, yeah. Last question: if they move back, and do you think that's for what position do you think they get if they move back? More than likely.
Oh, I think if they move back, especially if it's the late 20s,
Mhm.
mid to late 20s, they'll take Frazier there.
Frazier there. Yeah, I think you're right. I think they're going to go interior offensive line if they move back, unless somebody falls like tremendously.
Mm-hmm.
Mims, if he's out there at the very end as well, that might be something to question. But
Because you
um,
can always trade back up in the second and still get Frazier.
yeah,
Yeah,
you can even use some of that draft capital that you required or acquired
exactly.
from
Yep.
being moving back. So true story, man. I hope well, we'll see what happens. It's just a few more days away. I just hope that this draft ends up as good as the last one, if not even better. But I think it will. Where are you gonna watch the draft at, my man? Before we let everybody go.
I'm actually, I'm actually not sure. We haven't got our podcast scheduled for the draft yet, and
Hmm.
I know that we do some live stuff
Hmm.
during the first round, second round, uh, and even into the third round. We have round tables where there'll be a few of us podcasters, break down a an individual selection, and once we know more about that, we'll know. We can let the audience know who's going to be where and when.
You there, buddy? I think you may have frozen out for a second there. Well, guys, while Shannon is working his way back from his internet situation, I want to say thank you to everybody that's tuning in on the YouTube side. If you haven't done so, please hit the like button. Please hit the subscribe button. We've been climbing up steadily, and we're trying to get there even more. I see that you're back, Shannon, just in time to let everybody go. So, that being said, take us out, my man. And I think he's frozen again. We'll see you guys later. Peace.